Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Homeschool Minnesota. My name is Dayle Annand. I'm so glad to have you guys with us today. Homeschool Minnesota is a podcast outreach of Minnesota Association of Christian Home Educators, MÂCHÉ. We are here for you. We pray for you. We love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us week after week, day after day, whatever it is. We want to serve you as homeschooling families or just parents, grandparents, whatever. And speaking of grandparents, I think everybody has a grandparent story that they love. I know I do. I have my grandparent stories where I just remember the most wonderful times of being with my mom and my grandma and grandpa. And I was always thrilled when mom would be like, let's go to grandma's house. And it was just the happiest thing. And so today we are going to talk about grandparents. One of the quotes from the book that we're going to be talking about today is this: the culture wars have moved into families. It's a quote from today's guest, Lori Wildenberg, author of Grandparents Make Grandpartners, How to Have an Eternal Impact on Your Grandchild's Life. This is the book right here we'll be talking about. And so I just want to welcome Lori. Hi, Lori.
Hey, Dayle, I am so excited to be on your podcast. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
I'm excited too. Lori is an old Minnesota girl. She was born and raised here and went to school in Duluth and everything. But tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, Lori.
Sure. Well, my husband and I were college sweethearts at UMD, and we also knew each other in high school, but we did not date in high school, but did start dating in college. And then I started my teaching career. Actually, I taught for 10 years in the Anoka-Hennepin School District, and my husband and I got married shortly after we graduated from college. And then we had 4 kids, and God turned our idea upside down. When we were engaged, we talked about how cool it would be to adopt, and we would have 4 kids and we would adopt the 4th, and we would have 3 the old-fashioned way, so to speak. And what ended up happening is I ended up going through infertility, and the Lord flipped our plan upside down, and we adopted our oldest child from Colombia. And she was 3 months old at the time. And then we had 3 more the old-fashioned way, 1 born in Colombia, 1 born in Minnesota, and then 2 more born in San Diego. So our children are now adults. And of our adults, as you and I were talking, and you've got 1 more grandbaby than I have, we've got 5. And actually 3 are in San Diego. And then 2 are only a few miles away from us.
Wow.
So that's pretty great. And we've got incredible in-laws. 3 of our 4 kids are married, and God's really blessed us with some great in-laws.
Yeah.
So as I was researching for the book, Dayle, my goodness, there's a lot of hard relationships.
Yes.
And a lot of people shared some pretty hard stories with me, and I'm grateful that they did share them. And anyway, so the book starts out moving from talking about really good and healthy relationships and things to watch out for to keep your relationship healthy, or things to do to either strengthen or reconnect, or rebuild even a relationship. And then from there, because we always have to start with relationship with our adult children when we're talking about being grandparents. And then it moves into relationship with the grandkids, and then very practical ways to interact with your grandkids that will help foster their faith.
Yeah.
And gosh, you know what, Dayle, here's another thing, a very cool thing that I discovered. Grandparents are second only to parents in terms of the impact that they have on their grandchild's faith, morals, and values.
I believe
That
that.
blew my mind.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, I think that grandparenting roles, I think they're downplayed a little bit. And I think that, people don't really take them seriously. My husband and I, one of the things that we have to remind ourselves is that, our role as parents is not done. It's just not done until the day God calls us home. I think we are going to always be parenting, and always, then of course, the joy of grandparenting, which is just a whole different thing. And it's so wonderful. But what did you
And the
mean?
parenting role does kind of shift, doesn't it?
It does.
Because it's not the same, and that can cause a little friction,
Yes. Well,
right?
I always tell people parenting adult children is no joke, you guys. I used to think when they were little and I was running around crazy and I was half awake because I didn't sleep well at night because they didn't sleep well at night. And then they couldn't do anything for themselves and I had to do everything for them. And then they got a little older. And I kept thinking, this is going to be easier when they're adults because then you're just on their own. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's harder when they're adults to be their parent because you
Yes,
have to know when to get involved and when not to get involved. And it's hard.
that's true. It is hard. A friend of mine is working on a book right now, and
Wow.
she has she's got a quote that I had the pleasure of reading it ahead of time because I'm going to be one of her endorsers. And she talks about, her name is Kathy Cook. And one of the things that she says is that as we are moving into our kids move into the adult phase, we have to remember the word parent is really a noun. We are not necessarily parenting the verb, and to keep that in mind. And I thought that was brilliant.
Yes.
Because the relationship has to shift.
Yeah,
It has to shift.
it does.
But yes, it's hard.
It's really hard. There are times that I'm just like, yeah, you just need to know when to say things and when not to say things. And yeah, it's just loving on them. But what did you mean when you said that the culture wars have come into families now?
Yeah. Boy. Well, I know that you guys are really seeing what's happening, in the specifically Minneapolis, but the Twin Cities
Yeah.
area. It's very volatile and very emotional and highly charged. And a lot of what's going on is, we raise our kids up with a certain, our values and our expectations. And then at some point they own it or they choose to perhaps disown it. And they need to be able to make their own decisions and so forth. But what's happening with the culture is that, and this is very sad, there are many therapists, even Christian therapists today, who will say, for your peace, you need to separate or be estranged from or sever a particular relationship. And usually it's the parental one.
Yes.
Rather than working through it. And I know you had LaFawn on earlier, just recently, and
Yeah.
she talks about this a little bit. And this isn't how God intends families to be.
No.
Do we need to set up certain boundaries in certain cases? Yeah, that's appropriate. But God is a God of reconciliation and a God of forgiveness. And that is the first place to go and to be able to have conversations rather than you've got a different worldview than I have. Your worldview is secular, mine is biblical. We're going to clash. And rather than talking and seeking understanding, you may not ever agree, but that's okay.
Mhm.
We can still have conversations. And these conversations are being stilted by the culture. And I really think it is so tragic that we can't talk and we can't come to certain understandings, even if we don't agree. It's a
Yeah.
tragic thing. We need to understand how to work through conflict in a positive way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the things that I've noticed, my husband and I have mentioned this a few times in the last couple weeks, actually, of just everybody wants to put on social media their thoughts and they want to hash it out there, or they want to text you or send you a message of something that they saw that they're trying to prove a point or something. But nobody wants to call you up and say, "Hey, what do you feel about this? Tell me
Right.
what you think about this and why." With really without an understanding to I'm gonna tell you what you should be thinking about this. It's more just tell me what you're thinking. And I think also I remember when I was a kid, I mean, my mom and dad had friends and family that didn't agree, see eye to eye politically, they didn't see eye to eye spiritually, but they still hung out, they still had a blast, they still loved each other because you know why? They knew each other. They valued that relationship. And that relationship was more important than your political views and all those other things. I mean, when it comes right down to it, my mom's relationship with the Lord when her family wasn't serving the Lord at the time, they didn't have a relationship with the Lord, but now they do. And I think it's because my
Yes.
mom just kept loving on them and kept, and they started to see just the fruit and just God just over time softened their hearts and now they love the Lord. And it just, but it's like, they just want to cut people off now or
It's so true.
stop that conversation.
Yeah, I work with a lot of parents of well, I work with all parents in any phase or stage,
Yeah.
but most of my clients right now tend to be parents of adult children and they have strained relationships.
Yeah.
And it's very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Rather than, working toward, hey, let's find a place, like you said, where they can hang out and have fun. Find the unity in perhaps something that you enjoy doing together and set this other stuff aside unless you can have a truly respectful dialogue and where you're actually exchanging information. But Dayle, you mentioned something that's very true. A lot of times what happens is when someone's got a strong stance, shall we say, on something, maybe let's say it's a political issue,
Sure.
rather than having the conversation, they are going to spout off on social media, which is not going to change anybody's mind.
No.
Or they're going to send maybe a letter or a text, and then there's no conversation.
No.
And in one of the families that I work with, the young person will speak her point of view, and then she'll stop the conversation because she doesn't want to hear the opposite point of
Yeah.
view. Well, that's not a dialogue.
Yeah.
And to enter in, and this is where the boundaries are important, where you can say, hey, I would be interested in having a conversation with you about some of these things, but we need to keep kindness and respect in mind and to be able to listen to one another and listen for understanding. And we may never agree, but at least we've sort of given each other another perspective to think about. If we can do that, I mean, that's a win. You think about your husband. Tom and I are very similar on everything, but we are not exactly the same. No one
Right.
is going to be exactly the same. I'm probably not
Absolutely.
exactly the same as myself from a few years ago. It morphs, and we need to have space for that.
What are some of the greatest challenges facing parents and grandparents today, do you think?
Well, I do think the culture is
Yeah.
really, as we touched on. One thing that I discovered when I was also working on the book Grandparents Make Grandpartners was that what happens in the relationship with our adult children and our relationship with our grandchildren is really actually strongly dictated by the parents of the grandchildren.
Yeah.
It's up to them how much and how often and what and where and all of that.
Yeah.
Your role is largely determined by your adult children. And that's why the relationship, if we want a relationship with our grandkids, and most grandparents do, and most grandparents want the relationship with their adult children as well.
Yeah.
But that is where we need to start. And I think sometimes grandparents skip over the adult children to wanting the relationship with the grandchildren, and that's not going to work well. We need to be able to support our adult children and to remember they are the parents. And this is tough. We got to slide to the side and ask for permission if we have, some great wisdom to impart. But always ask for permission, or even maybe just hold back unless they ask you. Because if we go ahead and speak up and say something that we've observed because of our years of experience, and we know what would be helpful, if we do that and we haven't asked for permission or they haven't asked our input, it's going to sound like criticism.
Yes.
And it may even sound a little bit like control. And we have to remember now we have shifted to the grandparent place, not the parent situation.
Yeah.
We are not in control. We are a support system for our adult children. And we're the that is our role.
Yeah. Yeah.
To make sure that we are encouraging them.
Yeah, I think
So-
that's really good. I think the thing that I like what you said when we sometimes grandparents want to bypass their children to get to the grandchildren. And we have to remind ourselves that we were parents before we were grandparents. And we are always going to be parents to those children, no matter how old they are, no matter what's going
Yes.
on. Those children are important, and they need to know that they
Yes.
are. And
Yes, I love that. Yes.
yeah, they just need to know it. What are some ways as grandparents can we come alongside and be that support system, that really healthy, good foundational support system for our own kids as they parent their kids?
Well, I love what you said about, being there to encourage our our adult children and that they need it. They need to hear us say, I mean, actually say, wow, you are doing such a great job at being a
Absolutely.
mom or being a dad. And, you know, to, and not in a condescending way at
Mm,
all, just like you are thrilled. It really, it does your heart bursts with joy when you see
yeah,
your adult children, mother or father, their children.
yeah,
There's something so great about that, but speak it.
yeah.
Don't just think it.
Nope.
Don't just feel it. Speak it and say, I've watched you and how you interact with your son, and it is a beautiful thing. And specifically, I love watching you help him play hockey, or I love watching you play make believe with your daughter. It just warms my heart. Specific praise, just as we would give our grandkids. Why not give that to our adult children? Other ways we can support them is we can pray for them. And we sometimes forget to do that,
Hmm.
and for us to pray for them in their role as a spouse, pray for them in their role as a parent, and pray for them as a child of God, pray for their faith to develop. In the book, I give a lot of ideas on how to pray for our grandkids and how to pray for our adult children, because we we forget that that is critical.
Yeah.
And that is an important way to support our kids. Another way is just to be respectful of their boundaries. They're working so hard at parenting, and it's important to them as it was important to us. And I recall wanting to do some things like my parents did, but also wanting to do it my way.
Hmm.
And so they're going to save the stuff that they liked, and they're going to do some other things differently. And that's okay. And it's a different era, right? They are raising kids in a different world than we did,
Yep.
just as we were raising kids in a different world than our parents were. So to be very supportive and respectful, so that if they say they've got screen limits, and let's say you're watching the kids for a weekend and you feel a little tired and you'd like to, let them look at their tablets or something. But if the parents have said, these are the screen limits, we need to abide by
Yes, we
that.
do.
We need to be very respectful. The same with gift giving. If they have said, we don't want a big old drum set,
Or a
don't
dog.
give it to them. Yeah. Or a dog.
My kids
Right.
are like nothing with a heartbeat.
Oh, that's funny. I know. So, but exactly.
Yeah.
So we need to abide by those things. We need to be respectful, and we need to remember that they are the parents and we are not. And we've got to slide to the side.
Yeah. Yep. We get to be the grandparents. So I want to
Yes,
talk
which
about
is
the fun
wonderful.
of grandparenting.
Yeah.
So what are some of the grandparenting styles that you talk about in your book?
Gosh, well, I have 9 of them,
Yeah,
but maybe we'll just talk about a
just a
couple.
couple.
So the first one is the chum, and that's kind of the friendship sort of a situation. And that is the one that really the grandkids love. That's going to be the favorite grandparent for sure. The
That's
one
my
who does
husband.
all the fun. Yeah, mine too. Does all the very fun things. And that's super awesome. The downside of that is sometimes the chum may say, well, what happens at grandma's stays at grandma's. And that probably is something we'd want to avoid,
Yeah.
because we don't want to encourage lying, and we don't want to encourage keeping secrets, and we don't want to get in the middle of that relationship with the kids and their parents.
Yeah.
I think that's actually pretty critical. And then the other one is, but the chum is great fun, and always to make room for the chum to have some fun. And you might find that you are a little bit different grandparent with either each grandchild or each family, depending on kind of how they see your role. Another very common one is the captain, like I'm in charge, my house, my rules, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that, again, that grandparent is someone where usually the kids feel really safe and secure around, because the rules are clear and they know that grandma or grandpa's in charge. Again, the downside is perhaps a lack of flexibility, and also thinking, once again, saying my house, my rules, even though you might believe that and that might even be true, it sounds a little harsh. And so perhaps a conversation with your adult children, for instance, let's say at their house, they let their kids walk around with their snacks, and that's okay. Perhaps at your house, you're not comfortable with them leaving the kitchen or the kitchen table with their snacks. And so to talk about that to the parents before you come in and say, my house, my rules, you sit at the kitchen table. That would be the kind of the warning with the captain. The consultant is a personality that I think is actually quite helpful because they ask before they move, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, this my little grandson asked for, let's say the parents are there, asked for this particular treat and they had just had one a few minutes ago. Hey, is it okay if I give this little guy a treat, to ask before moving. The thing that can be hard with that is it might be difficult to make decisions in a time when you need to, if the parents aren't necessarily within earshot. So there's pluses and there's pitfalls with each different style. But of course, the one that we want to make sure that we weave in is the Christian coach, the one that is able to say, hey, let's go ahead and pray for our meal, or they're talking about God as the creator when they're out for a walk with the grandkids.
Yeah.
So to weave in our faith and that conversation with our grandkids on a regular basis, no matter what other grandparent personality you have, this can be done. And the book shows you how.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think it's good for us to understand our grandparenting style so we understand our weaknesses,
Yes,
because I think that the weaknesses are where there could be conflict with your adult children, for sure.
exactly. Yes. And to know what those weaknesses could be,
Yeah.
because sometimes we're blind to it,
Yeah.
and as you said, to be aware, to know that they exist, and then why is that a bad thing?
Right, exactly. So let's talk dynamics for a second here. One of the things that I think about a lot is if you are a parent listening to this and you're like, well, that's great. You guys seem to be really good, healthy grandparents. I only wish I had the same with my family. And then maybe as parents, the grandparents just aren't involved. They're just uninvolved in a lot of ways. I mean, they show up for holidays and they show up for birthdays, but they're not ones that are going to build relationship with their grandkids for whatever reason. They just don't do that, but the child really wants them to be involved, Or maybe it's just unhealthy for those parents, those grandparents to be as involved. Can you walk us through a little bit about the dynamics, speaking to the parents now, of if you are listening to this and you're like, how do I navigate that with my parents? Like, I want them to be
Yeah.
involved, but they don't seem to want to be. What can I do to
So
kind of bring them in? And then if they really are like not a healthy, how do I monitor their involvement so they don't feel estranged, but yet I don't feel safe with them necessarily either?
yeah, that's two more grandparent personalities. The
Okay.
check, yeah. So good question. The checked out, the one who, and also the canceled. So we'll start with the checked out. The checked out is the one who is really buying into what society says this phase of life should look like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Society says, hey, you've earned it. This is time for you to be selfish and to go and do what you want to do, and go play pickleball and go do a river cruise. Now I'm for both of those things.
Absolutely.
Those things are great, but what we want to do is keep priorities and perspective in
Right.
mind. That yes, those doing that stuff, nothing wrong with it at all. And if Tom comes home and says we're going to go on a river cruise, I am in. But not to have that as the top priority. What our top priority needs to be is what God says. And this is what God says in Deuteronomy 4:9. Only be careful and watch yourself closely so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen or let them fade from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children and to their children after them. Deuteronomy 4:9.
Mm.
Grandparents are beckoned, called, commissioned to be a part of growing those kids, their grandkids' faith.
Yeah.
And to do that, we have to be involved. And so I would encourage those who are really embracing the idea of this is my time to perhaps reprioritize. And for the parents who have parents that are behaving in this way, to have a conversation. And so many of the people that I interviewed as I worked on the book, there was a lot of pain when their parents were not interested in their children.
Mm.
And with the exception of maybe a holiday. Okay. And some even not that. So to have those conversations, and again, it's possible that it may not go anywhere. And then we have to deal with what's real, right? We have to deal with what's real and think about what our expectations are for what is real, so that we're not disappointed and set up for disappointment every single time, and thus having our kids, the grandkids, be disappointed as well. But I think start with a conversation that, hey, we'd like to see you more. I mean, it's possible the grandparents aren't quite sure what their role should be.
Yeah.
So assume the best. Start by assuming the best, and then ask your questions and have the conversation, because it could be there's just confusion. And then the flip side of the coin is when the parents say, I got to limit this contact because it is unsafe. Now, when I say unsafe, I'm going to say unsafe in terms of abuse, not unsafe in terms of communication, because that can be fixed. Maybe the abuse can be fixed too, but that is something that you really have to be careful of. So if there has been physical and physical abuse, neglect, or sexual abuse, I think that there needs to be a pretty strong boundary there, a pretty strong limit, and to not leave your kids alone with them if you decide that they do get to see the grandparents. But that is where I think we have to be really careful. Now, unsafe has morphed into, somebody saying something wrong or someone being offended. It has morphed way beyond what it should.
Right.
And all we need to do is have a little conversation about that.
Yeah.
Like, hey, when you said that particular thing to my child, I didn't appreciate that. And I don't think that that was a good thing to say.
Right.
And, that's going to, that could impact their feeling of self-worth. But to have the conversation for sure. And then I think, the idea of being unsafe, I think needs to be in the realm of like truly unsafe, abusive, or neglectful type stuff, as opposed to having an offense. God says, we're not to take great offense, to not be offended, right? Rather, try to think again, perhaps they've got a different conversation style, a different communication style than you. All right, talk about it. Yeah. Maybe even it's down to rather, hey, mom, hey, dad, please don't always say, don't do blah, blah, blah. Instead, say do blah, blah, blah. A little tweak, rather than, but to have the conversation again, I think is really important, and to know what it is that concerns you and decide, I think this is probably something we could work through.
It's really good. So what do grandparents give that parents can't always give to children?
I think we have a little more time.
We do.
And I think that is one of the things that I think is really beautiful. So sorry. My daughter-in-law and granddaughter and I, we were out running errands, and we had gone into this store and we went through it fairly quickly. And I'm all about that. I don't, let's get these errands done fast. My daughter-in-law, same way, let's get it done. Let's get it done. And so my daughter-in-law, she said something to the effect of, she was thinking she was rushing me, but I was all on board.
Yeah.
And she said, sorry, I was going so fast. I just wanted to get it done. And I said, hey, I love doing errands fast. I'm good with that. And then my granddaughter said, well, I don't like to do them fast. Now, she was 4 at the time. And I said, well, why is that? And she said, because I like to spend time with everyone.
My gosh, don't they just get you right in the feels every time, those little
I know.
grandbabies?
Yes.
They're
They're
so great.
sweet. But I think that, the time is huge. And because we are not there, there are grandparents that are there 24/7 because they're raising the kids or they're providing so much childcare. They're like, and that's another grandparent
Yeah.
personality. They're a surrogate, right?
Yeah.
They're there a lot, maybe not 24/7, but almost. But just to keep in mind that we don't have a lot of the emotions that surround the whole day. So we're like a fresh person coming in. And we also have the perspective that, yeah, this probably isn't that big of a deal. But as parents, perhaps we would have thought it was a really big deal.
Yeah.
So them leaving crumbs somewhere, well, okay, we can just clean it up. What's the big deal? But the parent feels the responsibility to, teach them to clean it up and go through that. And the parent will clean it up and talk about that. It's just a little bit less stress with grandma and grandpa or Mimi and Papa, or what are you, Dale?
Well, I was gonna ask you, that was my last question for you, is what are your, because I was gonna share my grandma names, and so my husband is Bumpa for all the
Oh,
grandkids.
that's cute.
That's just what they
Bumpa.
call him, and we waited until our first grandchild, our little granddaughter, Selah, when she gave us our grandparent names. So she started calling me Gammy, so I'm
Oh,
Gammy.
that's cute. Gammy and Bumpa.
Gammy and Bumpa. But for my other daughter, so that's for my one daughter and her 3 kids, and my son and his daughter. But for our other daughter and her 2 boys, I'm Gaga. I don't know
Gaga.
why.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
My grandson and granddaughter call their other grandma Gaga.
Yeah, I'm Gaga, and my husband's always Bumpa. Yeah, what about
Oh,
you? What
that's
is your
so
name?
cute. So I'm Mimi and my husband is Papa.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, so Dale, I was thinking this was like super unique because in Minnesota there aren't very many Mimis, right?
No.
And I came up with that because when my son was little and he was especially fond of me, he'd call me Mimi. And I
Oh,
thought, someday that's going to be my grandma name.
I love that.
And so then here we are in Colorado, Southwest, right? And I'm thinking, I'm Mimi. This is super unique. Come to find out, it's so common,
Everybody's Mimi. Yeah,
but I have a unique story.
yeah, I don't know. I'm Gammy and or Gaga, and my husband's Bumpa. And I think the reason why he wasn't Papa was because my dad, who is still alive and is very
Oh,
involved in all the great grandbabies, he's
yep.
Papa. And because
Yes.
that's what
That
my
makes
kids call
sense.
him. And so he's
Yes.
always been Papa. And they're like, no, Dad can't be Papa. That can't happen because we've already got one of those.
Yeah. You need a different name.
So
Absolutely.
Selah called him Bumpa, and that has been his name since. And it fits. It really fits because he's the guy who like
It's
picks kids
cute.
up and throws them around and swings them by a blanket. And you just wonder, are they going to
Yeah.
survive their day with Bumpa? We don't know, but
One of the funniest names I've heard as I was working on the book was Grumpo.
oh my gosh. Well, Bumpa's way better than Grumpo.
I think so.
That's hilarious.
I know,
Oh,
Grumpo.
wow. Well, for those of you who are listening, I mean, if you're a grandparent, if you have a grandparent in your life, if you are somebody who, just is going to be a grandparent, or if if you're going to have a baby and you want to break it to your parents, here's a good book for that, guys. You want to check this out. Grandparents Make Grandpartners: How to Have an Eternal Impact on Your Grandchild's Life. You guys, we talk a lot about discipleship on this podcast. That has kind of been a theme, and it's totally God, because I'm not a planner. If you know me at all, I am somebody who just kind of flies by the seat of my pants a lot. But God, I trust him that he's going to put things together. And so far, our theme from like July, August of last year to now has been discipleship, discipleship, discipleship. You guys, grandparents, if you think your job is done and all you get to do now is just hang out, you are missing it. Your God is counting on you. Your kids are counting on you, and your grandbabies need you. They need the discipleship that only you as a grandparent can bring to the table. They need that love. They need that acceptance. When parents get, because you think about when you were a parent and you were trying to deal with 3 kids or 2 kids or 6 kids or whatever, all at the same time, and the stress and the constant pulling on you. Grandparents don't have that. So we get to come into a situation and just kind of focus on one thing, and deal with it. And so you can bring that. You can bring that peace of Christ. You can bring that knowledge of the Holy Spirit. You can bring that love of Jesus into that relationship with your grandbaby. Like, parents, bless their hearts, can't always do. I know I couldn't, but they just need you. They need you to have their back. And they need you to know that they can turn somebody who they can turn to, who will love them no matter what, who will encourage them no matter what, who will always be there for them. So take it seriously. Get this book, you guys. It's a really good book. There's some great questions and ways to kind of process as you go through the book at the end of each chapter, kind of like, where are you at with this? I like books like that. I like books that give me thinkable moments, teachable moments in my own heart of okay, how can I become better at that? So I just want to thank you, Lori. Thank you for your book. It is a wonderful book. And I love the different chapters and the different things. I loved the thing that I liked the most, though, was at the end of each chapter, those thoughtful questions, the scripture, bringing us back to the foot of the cross of this, Jesus, show me how I can be better at this. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Dayle. It has been so much fun, and it was my great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you again. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for coming along with us. Everything we talked about will be in the description of the podcast, so you can just check it out. And we'll check you out the next time we have one. We're up 2 days a week, Mondays and Thursdays. So don't miss out. Subscribe, and then you won't miss anything. Thank you guys again for coming. Talk to you later. Bye.